In the world of After Effects, there seems to be no limit to what you can create. However, a great way to master motion design is by constantly upgrading your arsenal of techniques. So, let's get ready to harness the power of some of the most popular edits that you can use today. Alright, we'll start off the first edit by jumping into the water and creating liquid motion graphics. So, grab your swimsuit and select the rectangle tool. Create a shape that will cover up your entire title or graphic, then animate the position of that shape to animate from underneath the title. Now you can then set the track mat of the shape to your title or whatever object you're doing this with. But for a cool example, if you're working with a title, you may then duplicate that layer and set it to a stroke title to create a cool container. From here, we can then quickly apply the turbulent displace effect from distort, and easily you can just increase the amount to 100 and alt-click the stopwatch for evolution, enter time *250 or any value, and this will give you a liquid feel to your graphic. And if you like, you can also apply the roughen edges effect, which will add some subtle ripples to your shape. Now that everything is set up, you may duplicate the shape several times, offset the layers in time, and then change their colors to create this multicolor animation. And one thing I like to do is adjust the timing of the last keyframes so they all stop before filling up the entire graphic, and that looks great. But as a bonus tip, you can also apply the CC bubbles effect to a white solid layer and set the track mat to your title or graphic to add in some subtle bubbles. And now you can learn how to swim in After Effects. There's a saying, you should always date an After Effects guy because we don't break hearts, we break Mogarts. And sometimes hearts. To break and shatter anything like a criminal, add the shatter effect to your title or graphic, then set that view to rendered and the pattern to glass. This will give you a starter shatter effect and it looks okay. To make this more appealing, increase the repetitions and feel free to lower the extrusion depth to 0. From here, I would go to physics, mess around with these settings, but my favorites are setting the gravity to 0 and increasing the mass variance. Now we can go to the force and adjust the radius and strength to remove any pieces that are dangling around the edges. Now this is looking good, but what about only applying this to specific areas? Well, you can select the handy pen tool and create mask around the areas you want to shatter, and you can create as many masks as you like, but you may want to set the mask to none while you do this, but set them back to add when you're finished. Then duplicate the layer and set all mask to subtract, and be sure to delete the shatter effect on the bottom layer. And now you become Death, the destroyer of graphics. Before we move on to our next technique, be sure to pick up our free motion duck templates for After Effects and Premiere Pro. And if you find yourself needing to save precious time on all your projects, we have over 35,000 templates to help you produce amazing work with the link below. However, if you're ready to make a Transformers movie on a budget, next up, we'll go through how to morph logos, objects, and shapes into, well, other logos, objects, and shapes. So obviously you can work with regular shapes here in After Effects. However, if you have a logo, please ask your client for the vector file or the Illustrator version of the logo. Because with vector files, you have the power to right-click those layers you want to morph, go to Create, and select Create Shapes from Vector Layer. And this will turn your logos into shape layers with all that original detail. From here, you can select all the shape layers and hit U twice on your fancy LED keyboard. And then just go ahead and count the number of paths each layer has and choose the shape layer that has the most paths. Then you can add keyframes for every path and color in what I'll call the master shape layer. And then move forward in your timeline and go to the path in the other shape layer, copy it, and paste it to one of the paths in your master shape layer. And this will give you a partial morph. So then you'll need to continue to copy and paste every path into your master shape layer. However, you'll also likely want to change the colors as well. So go ahead and do that. And lastly, you can turn on motion blur and offset the keyframes to make Michael Bay proud. Wait, all right, there we are. Being able to make anything 3D is an absolute must-know in 2024. Thankfully, it's very easy to pull off, and you have a few options at your disposal. So, for example, you can make titles or logos 3D. And if you want to make a logo 3D, once again, please get your hands on the vector file. Then right click the layer, go to create and select create shapes from vector layer. I know, deja vu. But now whether you have a title layer or a shape layer, you can make the layer 3D and set the renderer here to Cinema 4D. Then you can go into the extrusion depth and increase this number. And you can also mess around with the other geometry options to get a feel for what you can do. But now we officially have a 3D object. And now you can animate any of the transform parameters. But for this, I'm just going to animate the Z position and the Y rotation to create this very simple flip, but it's beautiful. Now, there's a few things we can do for shading. For starters, if you like, you can create a new light and either use a point light or an ambient light, but just flip through the options to get a feel for it. And boom, that creates, noticeable depth. Now, if you don't want to use a light, or in addition to using a light, you can go into the shape layer and add a new group, and then place all the current groups into that brand new spanking group. Then select the only group remaining and give it a first place trophy. But in all seriousness, go to either side or back and select color, and then you can change the color to whatever you like, and now you have the option to fully customize your 3D object. Alright, finally, the last motion graphic technique is all about creating a revolving 360-degree title graphic. To do this, start with a large composition with a width over 4,000 and a height of 1080. Then type out your title or create enough graphics to lay out from one side to the other. And when you're ready, you can place this composition into your main regular composition and apply the CC cylinder effect from perspective. And simply all you really need to do is adjust the rotation values and animate the rotation Y by adding time *20, and that will beautifully rotate this in 360 degrees. I would also adjust the ambient under shading to help with the brightness. And if you want to place objects in the middle like I have, set the renderer to outside, and then duplicate the layer and set the render to inside. From here, you then can place the object in between the layers, and that's it. Subscribe if you want to be the best, and always be creating.